Hello there again, RosterWatch Nation, friendly neighborhood trash man. Back with more fantasy football news and information for your viewing and listening enjoyability. Let's go ahead and get started. I talked about it yesterday a bit. The Falcons exercising their fifth-year option for wide receiver Drake London, who will turn just 24 in July. He's locking for the 2026 season. Him turning 24, it makes me want to reevaluate where I have him in my dynasty rankings. I mean, London's been pretty good through his first 3 NFL seasons. Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, the only other wideouts to average more than 12 yards per catch on 100 receptions in 2024. I mean, that's rarefied air for London. London was third in receiving yards and seventh in receptions last season. And he really came alive when a young man named Michael Penix took the starting quarterback job in Atlanta. I mean, in the 3 games Drake London played with Michael Penix Jr., where Penix was starting quarterback for the Falcons, London played really well, had some really great games. He had 22 receptions on 39 targets, 352 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns over 3 games. So game by game, in week 16, 17, and 18 with Michael Penix, the first week, 16, okay, kind of pedestrian, the first game together, 5 receptions for 59 yards, 8 targets. But then in week 17 against the Commanders, explosion. A stat, 7 receptions for 106 yards on 13 targets. Okay, so marked improvement from week 16. Week 18 versus the Panthers, even better. An absurd game. Stat-wise, 10 receptions, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 18 targets, 187 on a Carolina Panther, making a career high in receiving yards for a single game. So I think it's safe to say that his rapport with Penix improved over just those 3 games. It improved markedly. London averaged 23 fantasy points per game in those 3 games. 39% target share. London's passer rating when targeted by Penix was 103.8 compared to 80.5 with Kirk Cousins. London ended up finishing the season as wide receiver 5 in PPR fantasy leagues. A lot of people don't realize that. I think because Drake had an up and down year the previous year, and because, there was some inconsistency last year at the beginning of it with Cousins under center. If you compare what Penix did to other wide receivers over that 3-game sample, I mean, London was among the NFL's top performing wide receivers. He was a top 5 receiver, like I said, in that span. Compared to other receivers, London's numbers, they rivaled that or exceeded that of guys like Justin Jefferson, guys like CeeDee Lamb over those 3 weeks, especially considering his target volume. And does he have more competition going into 2025 for targets? Or is it similar to what he had last year? Well, let's take a look. So he's got Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, okay, Casey Washington, Philip Dorsett, Chris Blair, Dylan Drummond, Jesse Matthews, Kadero Hodge. Added to the team, though, Jamal Agnew, David Sills, Makai Polk. And we just have one undrafted free agent rookie receiver that was added to the squad, and Nick Nash. And admittedly, I love Nick Nash. I mean, he led college football in receptions and yards, I think, in 2024. But he went undrafted, which was odd. So suffice to say that he's not a shoo-in to start for the Falcons this season. And if he doesn't break the waves there, then you still have Mooney and McLeod, the same crew basically from 2024, when Drake London over those 3 games with Michael Penix was the top 5 wide receiver. So just looking at our dynasty rankings, I mean, I had to talk to Cody about something. I mean, he has Marvin Harrison Jr. above Drake London, which I don't. I don't think Marvin Harrison Jr. deserves to be above Drake London. I mean, he's only a year younger than Drake London. So it's not like there's a big age difference there. I think London deserves to be ahead of him. I mean, let's take a look at this. Okay, so we have Nico Collins ahead of him. Nico Collins, age 26. I mean, Nico Collins could very well be a top 5 wide receiver this season. He's going to have more competition for targets. I do know that. I think I like London more than Nico. We have Brian Thomas ahead of him. Brian Thomas, who will get some competition for targets, and Travis Hunter in 2025. I don't know. I think I like London more than Thomas in that respect, based off of what happened in the draft. We got Puka Nacua ahead of him, same age, but Puka Nacua has Devontae Adams in the mix now. I think I like London more than Nacua. Okay, that puts him up next to Jackson Smith and Jigba, who has Cooper Kupp to contend with for targets in Seattle, with Sam Darnold under center for at least the start of the season. I mean, he's a year younger than London, but I think if you're talking about touchdown upside, if we're talking about big play ability, just in that offense, I still think I like London more. So then next we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's 2 years older than London. So that's the big difference there. And we're talking about our dynasty top 250. I think for that reason, I like London more than Brown. So then ahead of him now, we just have Neighbors, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and Jamar Chase. And I think that's where he should be. I think he should be 5th receiver in my top 250. So I'm making it as such in our top 250 dynasty rankings. I didn't realize I liked him as much as I do. But it's hard to deny those numbers. Welcome to the chat, Derek Just. Just traded the 1-1 in Leggett for 1.5, 3.7 in Collins. I have the Stroud Nico stack. My starting wide receivers are Brian Thomas Jr. and Nico. Flex spots, Ayuk and Marvin Mims. Orphan rebuild thoughts? I also have the 2-1. I mean, I like all of this except for the Mims. Let's take a look at the Denver Broncos depth chart for a moment. So along with Mims starting, we have Cortland Sutton, all right, Devon Vele. They added Pat Bryant in the draft. They got Troy Franklin, Trent Sherfield. Troy Franklin, who still has, a little bit of juice, I guess. A.T. Perry, Jajuan Newton, Michael Bandy, Joaquin Davis, and Courtney Jackson. I mean, there's definitely a path to fantasy relevance for Marvin Mims in this offense. The question is, does Pat Bryant, who is 6'2", 204 pounds, is he eating more into Cortland Sutton's touches or potential touches, targets, or Marvin Mims? I mean, Mims is much smaller, 5'11", 182 pounds. I mean, I don't hate Mims. I don't hate Mims here, but that's the one piece that I would consider adjusting based on what you have here. That's the one weak spot. Garrison, welcome to the chat. Trash man, yeah, that's me. It's my name. Don't wear it out. So Drake London, 5th-year option exercise. Drake London, top 5 wide receiver in my eyes, in fantasy and otherwise going into the 2025 season. You could probably get value on him in drafts right now. A lot of people don't really realize how good he can be with Michael Penix under center. In more football news, free agent running back Travion Williams worked out for the Texans on Thursday. His former teammate Chris Evans also worked out for the Texans on Thursday. Both of these guys have been in backfields with Joe Mixon, have been his backups. Maybe that's why they brought them in. It's a little bit curious for me because the Texans did add USC running back Woody Marks, pass catching back in the draft. Good hands, good solid hands. Doesn't have great speed though. Looks like they're not intent on just giving Marks the backup job. So maybe they sign Travion Williams or Chris Evans, bring the Bengals backfield to Houston. So what looked like a pretty good starting point for Woody Marks in 2025 could change rapidly, could change for the worse. They add another back in Houston. In more football news, Titans head coach Brian Callahan told reporters that Cam Ward and Will Levis' first-team receptions will sort of get determined by how they perform when given opportunities. No duh. I mean, I guess the subtext here is that Will Levis is not going to be, the de facto starter here, that we're not necessarily going to bring Cam Ward along slowly, that Cam Ward could be the starting quarterback in week 1 and probably should be. But, unless Levis has a resurrection this offseason, Ward should be under center for most of camp and when week 1 comes around. Will Levis makes a decent backup in that situation. That's what he needs to be. Will Levis needs to be holding a clipboard and potentially backing up Cam Ward. In other football news, Adam Thielen did not commit to playing beyond the 2025 season. When asked if 2025 could be his last season, Thielen responded, "It could be, yeah." I mean, as it probably should be. Thielen will be 35 at the start of the season. He revised his contract in the offseason for his effectively a 1-year, $8.5 million deal. Not bad for the old man. He discussed retiring after last season with his family, decided to come back because he was still the Carolina Panthers' number 1 receiver. Arguably. I mean, I guess you could argue Xavier Legette in that conversation, but is he really? Was he really? Now that Ted McMillan is part of the wide receiving core, that changes things a bit for Thielen. He's no longer the top dog necessarily. But I do think he'll be fine in fantasy this season, especially in PPR formats. McMillan actually takes some of the onus off of Thielen, takes some of the pressure off of Thielen. He's going to get his targets. But not committed to playing beyond 2025. Okay, and so maybe that opened things up. I think I'd like McMillan a little bit more in Dynasty minus Thielen. I mean, as it is this season, I'm not super stoked on McMillan and his fantasy outlook. I mean, that's mainly because Bryce Young is the quarterback, and I'm not really excited about any player that's tied to Bryce Young's arm. So unless Young takes a big step up this season, then there are other rookie receivers that I like more than McMillan. I like Emeka Egbuka in Tampa Bay. Great offense. Much better quarterback. And he'll probably be a starter too. He's got some guys to contend with in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin for targets, but you have to like that offense. You have to like that situation. And I'm done drafting good players on bad teams. I'm done with that. Hans S. Mims getting 4+ design screens plus lining up in the backfield, and Kara Bryant's skill set overlaps Vele. Okay. Duly noted. I don't love Mims' upside in that offense. I mean, maybe he's an asset in PPR. I still think Bryant makes for a better red zone option. Oh, Garrison, you don't like Coker? I love Coker. I love Jalen Coker. I think Jalen Coker should be a starter for the Panthers, but it just seems unlikely that he's going to get many opportunities in this offense now. I mean, they paid up, draft pick wise for McMillan. for Leggett. They're going to give those guys the first opportunities. And maybe Coker outplays him. I hope he does. And if Adam Thielen leaves after 2025, I really like Coker's chances. Definitely an underrated player in that offense. But it's hard. Fourth option in an offense led by Bryce Young. I mean, all my hopes and dreams are that Jalen Coker emerges as a viable fantasy option in 2025 and beyond. But he's got some tough sledding with the competition he has and with Bryce Young being the quarterback there. On the low volume offense passing wise. I almost feel like Coker would do better if he were released or traded elsewhere. No, but I still love Jalen Coker. Always have. Always loved you. Titans head coach Brian Callahan also told reporters that wide receiver Alec Ayomanar will probably start his work at X receiver, but his flexibility to do more. Ayomanar, who a lot of people thought was just kind of a contested catch guy, is being talked up by Callahan as being more versatile than that. The future is wide open in Tennessee as far as receivers go. I mean, ahead of Ayomanar right now, you have Calvin Ridley, of course, okay? Tyler Lockett, and that's debatable. We know Tyler Lockett is no longer a spring chicken. It's fallen off a cliff, fantasy-wise, over the past couple seasons. But then you have Van Jefferson. Okay, we know what we have there. We know what we don't have there. PPR value could be, but with a low ceiling. Traylon Burks, who's never lived up to his potential in Tennessee. Jameer Dyke, or DK, who was drafted. Okay. Maybe a bit more competition there, although he's not as big. 6'1", 196 pounds. And Xavier Restrepo, who has that connection with Cam Ward, he was his quarterback. So they had that rapport already. So while there is some competition there in Tennessee for sure, there's definitely a clear path to fantasy relevance for Ayomanar. I mean, aside from Ridley, there's nobody who's, head and shoulders above Ayomanar and his upside. So somebody to consider in Dynasty for sure. Somebody to take a flyer on, so to speak. And more football news. Samaje Perine expected to reprise a lesser version of the 2-minute passing down role he held in his previous seasons with the Bengals. Last time Perine played for the Bengals was in 2022, caught 38 passes for 287 yards and 4 scores. And it was still a good season for Joe Mixon, who had over 1,200 yards, despite missing 3 games. And so what they're saying here is basically Perine won't play as much as he did in 2022. And so there should be plenty left for Chase Brown, excuse me. I was conflating him and Chris Evans for a moment. Thing is, Chase Brown's not going to be able to play as many downs as he did last season. He shouldn't. He's not built for that. He was never meant to do that for the Bengals. But the Bengals' only addition at running back via the draft was Taj Brooks in the 6th round. So it looks like Brown is safe from a fantasy perspective, from an outlook perspective, but I don't know that he's going to hold up getting that many touches, Ride him till the wheels come off for sure in fantasy, but I would think that they bring somebody else in there to relieve him more often. And so maybe that, depending on how Brooks performs, maybe he's a guy we look at in Dynasty. Things go south with Brown, which they could in a hurry. Then all you got really is Taj Brooks and Samaje Perine. Let's take a look at that depth chart. Make sure. I mean, okay, so you got Zach Moss. Something could happen with Zach Moss, though. He could go elsewhere. Gary Brightwell, Kendall Milton, Quali Conley. But yeah, it looks like a pretty safe season for Chase Brown on the outlook. And if you were hoping for Samaje Perine to provide standalone value in fantasy this season, look elsewhere. It's not a road you want to go down. A road that Cardinals coach Jonathan Gannon wants to go down is the Marvin Harrison Jr. road. He's really excited to see where Marvin Harrison Jr.'s game goes in his 2nd season. That makes one of us. Garrison Heat praised on Harrison Jr. for his work ethic and initiative during the offseason. Good for him. He also added that Harrison Jr. added some muscle mass after his rookie campaign. That is good for him. Kind of got bullied out there. The number 4 overall pick in 2024 went for 885 yards and 8 scores in 2024. It's not bad. But they weren't what we expected from a player of Harrison's ilk. We were comparing him to Malik Neighbors. A lot of people were saying he should have been drafted ahead of Malik Neighbors, at least to start off with, or should be drafted prior to the draft in 2024. I was never one of those guys. And then, I saw the Cardinals play the Colts for 2 days, joint practices, last summer or into early fall. And Harrison, I didn't notice him at all in those practices. Greg Dortch was the best receiver for the Cardinals in those practices. The best wide receiver. And Trey McBride was the guy that Kyler Murray went to on those team drills. And that kind of, I would say subpar, but subpar for what you're expecting out of Harrison campaign in 2024. I mean, it leaves a lot of room for improvement in 2025. Maybe he goes undervalued in drafts. And maybe he plays above that value this season. But like I said, I'm not terribly excited about Marvin Harrison in fantasy this year unless I can get him at value. I'm not reaching for Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not drafting him where he's being drafted. Unless I can get value on Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not taking him. I'm taking Drake London instead. So hopefully Marvin Harrison Jr. improves this season. He definitely should, but I'm not contending with another up and down season from a guy who you're drafting to be your number 1 receiver. 885 yards and 8 scores won't do as your number 1 receiver in fantasy. In more football news, Seahawks coach Mike McDonald said Sam Darnold will take over 90% of the snaps. Okay. He goes on to say, one of the reasons we hired Clint Kubiak was his ability to incorporate the whole roster and really bring out what everybody does really well. Adding Jalen Milroe is a part of that, McDonald added. So this indicates that Milroe will have some action, maybe in a kind of Taysom Hill role in 2025. He'll have some packages, maybe some goal line packages. Why not? Why not get him in there on some tush-push action? You know, 90% of snaps isn't great necessarily for a starting quarterback. You want 100% of snaps for your starting quarterback from a fantasy perspective. That 10%, especially if it consists of goal line snaps, that could hurt you in fantasy. So Sam Darnold, maybe a little bit of the shine is taken off. Maybe if you're wary of drafting Sam Darnold in fantasy, this is just enough potentially bad news to get you off of him completely. I wouldn't blame you. Sam Darnold, we saw the wheels fall off at the end of 2024. We don't know what we're going to get in 2025. We don't know which Sam Darnold we're going to get yet. And knowing that Jalen Milroe is going to get in there on some of those snaps, potentially some of those goal line snaps in 2025, just gives you another reason to not love Sam Darnold in fantasy this season. He's going to have to do really well otherwise. We hope you do really well otherwise in your fantasy leagues and in life. You're a part of RosterWatch Nation. We're family here. My uncle and nephew coming up shortly in a couple hours, Alex and Cody, to talk more fantasy football. Until next time, this has been the Trash Man on behalf of RosterWatch.com. Be ready.
This is Anthony Richardson, and you're listening to Roster Watch.
This is AJ Brown.